Hey everyone, it's Dominic from the Primetime Treasure eBay store and YouTube channel. Thank you very much for coming by to check out another video. You know, in the reselling community, there's a lot of YouTube videos that we all do for those of us who have channels that are very positive and lighthearted in nature. Things like haul videos and what's sold videos and be on the lookout videos, tip videos, news updates, those sorts of things. Those are great to do. They should really be the main focus of the channels that we have. However, from time to time, I do think it's important to broach topics that are more serious in nature and kind of, you know, address a major issue that really may be going on in somebody's life. And you know, it's safe to say that if it's an issue that's affecting one person, it's probably affecting multiple people as well. Some people may not feel comfortable discussing these types of topics because they may feel like that they're failing in some way, or they're disappointing others, or they're not keeping up with their peers in some way. And I want to kind of pierce the veil with that a little bit here and make this channel a forum for this particular video, you know, a place where if you're struggling with an issue like the one I'm going to talk about as the theme for this video today, I want you to feel free to leave that type of comment down below and either offer support maybe to others and tips beyond the ones that I'm going to give to help people in this situation, or if you just need some help or need some assistance, feel free to just leave that in the comment section down below. And what I'm talking about are people who have gotten into reselling a little bit over their heads, or sometimes a lot over their heads, especially when there is a spouse involved and the spouse is not on the same page with you. They're maybe not supportive of the reselling business. They don't think it's a good idea. They think it's kind of something that's a novelty and is going to kind of go away in a few months. You know, and it's not something that you could really be serious with. Or maybe they were supportive at one point, but then they started to lose interest. When that typically happens is when the reseller brings in a lot of volume in terms of items to sell into the residence, and it starts to take up space that the spouse or significant other can see. And when that happens, that's usually a trigger, especially if it's something that's getting in the significant other's way. You know, something they have to walk past, look at all the time. That can definitely be a problem, and it could start leading to arguments, and ultimately it can lead to relationship breakups. It could lead to separation, could lead to divorce. These are kind of the real bad things that can happen when reselling goes wrong. And that's kind of the theme of the video. It's not all fun and laughter and, you know, everybody just is always just making cha-ching sales all the time. It's not always like that for everybody. So let's talk about a few ways to kind of address this issue head on, hopefully proactively, but then a few things to discuss if it's kind of just gotten out of control and, you know, things are starting to become problematic with the spouse. Now, for many of you who watch this channel and have come back time and time again, you're well aware that I work full-time as a board-certified neuropsychologist, so I bring the angle of a psychologist into this discussion and can combine that with the reselling angle. So I think that's a unique perspective that I try to give people come to this channel. So if you didn't know that, now you do. That gives you kind of a little bit of a background in terms of where I'm coming from. The other thing I'll just mention by way of background is for those who do not know, yes, I am married. I jokingly refer to my wife as Mrs. Primetime. We, from the very pretty much beginning of our relationship, started out together when eBay was in its infancy, and one of the things that we did for fun a lot was to go out to a massive flea market in South Florida where we used to live called the Swap Shop, and we basically cut our teeth doing that without any apps whatsoever and just went out tried to find stuff, bring it home, and flip it on eBay when it was just an auction-only site. So, you know, we had a lot of fun doing that, and ever since then, we've always, you know, kind of done things together, like go to garage sales and antique stores and things like that. So I just want people to know that, kind of where I'm coming from, if you have not been to this channel before and you just kind of stumbled across it for the first time. So the first thing that I'm going to say that's important before you get into reselling business, if you have a spouse or, you know, significant other, you know, where it looks like it's a serious relationship, is that you have a discussion about why you're doing this and what your goals are. And, you know, regardless of communicating that to the spouse, you need to know that as well. Is this something that you just want to try out for a few months and see what's going to happen with it, and then kind of take it from there and see possibly if you could develop it into you know, into a more serious hobby and then perhaps into a business? Or are you someone that in the past has a lot of experience with it and now you're kind of ready, you start a relationship with someone new and you want to just kind of kick it right into full gear, but you're kind of doing both things at once? You have this relationship just, you know, kind of turning serious, and you also want to kick your reselling business into full gear. Or, you know, maybe you have a significant other, you've been married for 25 years, and all of a sudden you heard about reselling, you really want to get into it. And, you know, it's real important to have that discussion with the spouse, because what's going to happen is that if you go out and you all of a sudden purchase, let's say, a big lot of items at an auction, and you know, have several truckloads of which to bring home, and especially if you don't have a big living area by which to store this stuff, the significant other slash spouse is likely going to get upset if he or she has to walk by this stuff all the time, if it's encroaching into their living space or living area. You know, they see boxes piled up, if it's disorganized, that kind of thing is going to be upsetting, and you've got to try to understand that from the significant other's point of view. That's really important. I mean, you can't just kind of go back and argue with the person and say, well, you know, you don't understand, you don't understand, you don't understand. That's not going to work. It's not going to be an effective solution. You've got to also show that you're trying to understand what their perspective is as well. So as much as possible, kind of having an open discussion ahead of time of what the goals are with the business, of why you're doing it, and where you think you could actually go with it. And if you could show numbers to show how it could be successful, if you would rather try reselling out, for example, than going out, maybe your husband is pressuring you to go out and get a part-time job somewhere in like a formal office setting, but you think, no, I could do the reselling thing, show it, show on paper how you are actually making, you know, $100 a day, for example, selling on eBay, and how that's going to ultimately bring in more money than any kind of part-time job that you have to do. You know, it does involve staying at home, and sometimes there's a stigma that can be associated with that. And so it's important to kind of let the person know, hey, you know, I'm actually not staying at home all the time. I'm going out, I'm sourcing, I'm going to a post office, I got to go to FedEx. You know, there's lots of different things I have to do. I have to go get, you know, shipping materials. There's all sorts of things that you have to do. So it's not really true that it's just a pure stay-at-home type of job. Now, those are things that are important to do ahead of time. Try to kind of come to a common ground. But sometimes, even if you are at a common ground initially, or let's just say worst case scenario, you really didn't communicate too well about how this reselling business was going to transpire. It started out with a few items, and then all of a sudden it starts to just really become a big thing in terms of how much merchandise you are bringing into the house, and you're bringing it in much faster than you could actually sell it. So one thing to do if the spouse is getting upset, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to communicate, all right, I understand this, I do agree on some level that there's an issue here, and we have to work on trying to address it together. Now, to the extent that you can maybe bring that partner of yours into your reselling business in some way, you know, they're complaining, they're upset, but is there any way that that significant other can help you? Is there a way that that person could take some pictures for you? Is there a way that person could do some listings for you? Now, they're not obligated to do this. It's your business, after all, that you started, and maybe they really had no say in it whatsoever when it first started. So, but it's just something to potentially throw out there. Maybe it's something that you two can do together as kind of a fun activity to kind of, you know, be more efficient, kind of try to turn into a reselling couple. If you're not familiar with people doing that, you definitely should go check out the Rally Roots YouTube channel. Ryan and Allie do an awesome job of teaming up together and being efficient. Another one is Side Hustle Pros. You should check them out as well. Just, you know, really working together strong as a power couple to be successful. So that's, you know, something that's a potential option. It's not going to work well for everybody. Now, even if it's not going to work well for everybody and you cannot literally form a reselling couple, one thing you definitely can do, and this is a good thing to show your partner that you actually understand what they're talking about and you're taking them seriously, because that's one of the most important things. If someone has a gripe or someone has a complaint, they want to at least feel that you're hearing them out. Maybe you can't solve it immediately, but as long as they feel like they're being heard in some way, that's a very important first step. So one thing I would suggest is say, okay, let's just sit down for a second. Let's just discuss it, you know, calmly. Why don't we do this? Why don't each day we spend maybe 15, 20 minutes together, maybe a half an hour, whatever time you could spare, in a certain room or a certain area of the house where you're feeling stressed out and you want things kind of reorganized in some way. So we'll go over to that area together, so it kind of makes it a couples project, and it's a way to kind of prioritize what is most bothering the spouse. Because the way you have to think about it too, after all, is that if you have all these items that are stacked up all over the place and you need to get it listed, well, what's the difference if you list, you know, items in room A versus items in room B? It all's got to get up at some point. So this is a way to kind of help motivate you to get certain things listed. Let the spouse kind of point you in the right direction in terms of some things that just need to get reorganized, maybe just put away sometimes, and listed. So have that goal. What is it that's bothering you, stressed out, that's kind of accumulating, and what do you want me to list? Name one or two items today you want me to list, and go list those things. Go get those things up. So this way, at least the spouse sees that you're making some progress. Now, another thing I would advise is you have to check yourself and say, when is it time for me to actually put the brakes on bringing in so much stuff? Maybe you even need to put the brakes on completely, but at least put the brakes on somewhat so you're bringing in less than you're actually putting out. So, you know, that's something that is important to consider. And so, you know, I even talked about that yesterday in my video, where I said just part of my business model in general is when the fall comes around, which is now, we are heading into fourth quarter on October 1st, which is technically now at time I'm making this video. You know, I do them late. So this is the time where I really want to focus more on listing. I spend spring and summer accumulating a lot of inventory. Now I want to start getting this stuff out more. I mean, I'm listing all year, but now I kick it into a much higher gear. So that's another thing. Now, if you are pretty disorganized, you've got stuff all over the place, it's very important to put together an organized system somehow. Whether that means purchasing storage shelves. I'm going to link down below to a video I did. It's one of my earlier videos where I just show you about going out, getting a storage shelf, different ways, different systems by which I organize things. I think I have like 2 videos on that. And you could just go check it out and you could just see how much more efficient it makes things. You know, if you have a bunch of clothes, for example, that are scattered all over the place, take them and put them in a tubby. Like right over here, for example, I have this big black tubby that's filled with clothes that I need to get listed, and I'm going to focus on getting those listed. But having them folded neatly in this tubby is way better than having piles of clothes just scattered all over the place. That's going to make anyone stressed out, including you. So that's an important thing to do as well. So make sure you're trying to rearrange things, organize things, put things in a neat system, bins, storage shelves, you know, anything, filing cabinets for paperwork. Get yourself organized. Now, you may need to rearrange things. Maybe you need to rearrange things in your house so that you find areas where you could store things better and more efficiently. So maybe that means just shifting things around in terms of how you have things in the house. Maybe it means using your barn or your shed in a way that you didn't originally intend, but at least it helps get some stuff out of the house that's somewhat weather resistant, you know, in terms of, you know, where you could store it. So that's another option. Other things, depending on how big your business is and how much money you're willing to invest in it, provided it makes sense, is to go out and invest in a storage unit. You know, you could, you know, usually kind of get a storage unit for $100 a month or less. Sometimes you could get some deals, or maybe you could rent some type of office space nearby where you could you know, store stuff in a secure area. There's different options. You've got to check out just what may or may not work for you in your area. Now, another thing that's important to consider, because a lot of people are going to hear these solutions and they're going to say, well, that's great, but I don't have the time to really do those types of things. Well, you've got to find a way to make the time, whether that means staying up half an hour later than you normally do, whether that means just rearranging things so you and your spouse, like I said earlier, have the time to kind of do something as a couple, which is this project that you maybe never normally did before. Maybe that means taking a day off of your regular job at some point and just focusing on rearranging things, organizing things, getting things listed, not going out to a garage sale or an estate sale that day. So, you know, that's another option in terms of things you could do. Another thing you could do by yourself, if, you know, maybe your spouse isn't around, they can't kind of do this joint project with you, is just go to an area of your house or of your apartment or wherever it is you live and find a small area. Maybe it's a table, maybe it's just some little nook where you've got a lot of stuff piled up. And here's my challenge for you if you're in that situation. It's called chunking. It's one of the best things you could do psychologically. What you do is you just take one item. So behind here, for example, is a desk. So let's say tomorrow, I'm going to take this book and I'm going to list it on eBay. And I'm going to get that off the table. Now, I've got a lot of stuff on the table, let's say. It doesn't look like I made a big dent, but in my mind, psychologically, I know I took one thing off. You cannot put another thing on that table. Day 2 comes, and you list another thing. So let's say here we've got Funko Pop. Okay? I'm going to take that off. I'm going to list that on Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm going to list this Superman comic book. And then on Thursday, we're going to list the Popular Mechanics book. And then on Friday, we're going to list some kind of vintage houseware item. Whatever, you get the point. The key is you cannot add back to that area. And each day, you are going to slowly take a piece away, and you're going to start to see it add up. And you're going to start to see your progress, and you're going to feel really good about it. You're going to see that you are slowly eliminating that mess. You got to be disciplined with it. You have to make sure that you do it every day. But that's one approach. If you're super, super busy, don't have the time, just use that chunking approach. Now, certainly, if you could afford to take 3, 4, 5 hours out of your day and really hit that table, hit that area, and just massively reorganize it, go for it and do it. But if you can't do that, then use the option that I just mentioned. Again, it's called chunking. It's just doing things in little bits and pieces and having it add up. And make sure you communicate that to your significant other. Let them know the plan. Communication is key to resolving these problems with your spouse. You cannot both hold it in and not let each other know either what the problem is or what you're doing to address it. You need to have the communication lines open in both directions, communicating the problem, communicating the solution, and then tweaking the solution. And you also have to be honest with yourself in terms of and with each other in terms of what's realistic that you could really get done in a given day. You know, for example, spouse might say, you know what, I really want half that table to be cleaned up by today if you can. So you try to do it, but maybe you have to take your kids to a soccer game, and you've got to go grocery shopping, you've got to make dinner. That was your goal. You thought you were going to get half the table done, but in reality, you only got one small corner of it done. Well, you know what? That's one small corner that's gone that wasn't gone before you started the project. And that's what you have to, communicate. You have to say, hey, listen, I know I didn't get it all done, but at least I got something done, and tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to work on, getting more of it done, and let's just not add to it. So, those are just some brief, quick ideas. I don't want to just keep going on and on forever and make this the longest video, but I just wanted to get this topic out there. Again, I wanted to open the communication lines between you and your spouse if there's an issue like this going on. Or significant other. And I also just want to open the communication with that topic here on this channel, right here in this forum. So if something you can relate to either now or maybe in the past, and you have, again, I'm kind of going full circle, but just to remind you, if you have any tips, any stories you can relate for others, please put them down here. People do read the comments. They like to see that type of stuff. And it really can be a helpful thing for people to see. So I hope this video was helpful. Tomorrow I'm probably going to do a what sold video. Lots of great items to go over for the month of September. And remember, Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right here, the first ever Primetime Treasure live show. See you there.